I was starving, doing homework in my room, and after a long day of fifth grade, I ran downstairs to grab a snack. My mom, sitting oddly silent at the kitchen counter, asked, "I want to talk to you about something. Do you have a minute?" Now nervous, I hurriedly scrounged through the pile of Gushers and Chex Mix. "You're getting older, and I want to tell you about something special that happens when two people are in love." She barely finished her sentence, and I was out of my chair, racing back upstairs. I was either too embarrassed or fearful that I'd confess under pressure and she'd take my Snoop Dogg doggy style tape. You may have lasted longer with your folks or parental figure through that conversation, but navigating sexuality as a kid in the 80s and 90s was like live Mortal Kombat. Especially for me, as I grew up in a conservative Christian religion, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or Mormon Church. Here's the setup. In 1981, the U.S. government passed the Adolescent Family Life Act, aiming to reduce teen pregnancy and disease transmission through focusing on abstinence before marriage in sexual education. In some junior high health classes, hour-long slideshows clicked through startling, vivid images of sexually transmitted infections. Thankfully, I missed that day and was only mildly scarred watching the live birth video, The Miracle of Life. 76% of Americans claim a religious status, and going to church is a source of community and education. As young Mormons, messages about sex could be heard from leaders at weekly youth group activities, gender-divided summer camps, regional youth conferences, or even global membership conferences. Guidelines about sexual purity came from a booklet called For the Strength of Youth. Boiled down, they were a list of do's and don'ts with nothing to speak of the actualities or goodness of sex. Plus, analogies some leaders used were not a far cry from the scare tactics found in sex ed class and could make you feel less than virtuous. But these messages often faded into oblivion when the glittering chatter of fulfilling your greatest potential by getting married and becoming parents rallied youngsters to contain their teenage angst for just a little while longer. And all the while, preteens couldn't get away from jamming out to Salt and Peppa and LL Cool J or watching that steamy below deck car scene with Jack and Rose. To fuel the anticipation and possibilities of getting married, Mormon singles get jazzed when they turn 18 and can start attending a congregation solely made of singles in hopes of finding their soulmate and transitioning to adulthood, both culturally and congregationally. But there is a growing gap. The population of single Mormons is rising, and they are getting married later in life, if at all, which means that teenage angst is morphing into adult sexual tension and shame. It is a cultural norm that sexual literacy is only accessible to married folks, which adds to the already deep chasm between these separated members. Meanwhile, the byproducts of the messages of their youth sink in deeper, widening the disconnection between their bodies and the truth about their sexuality. Because the expectation is that these singles will follow the same do's and don'ts list from their youth, including do not participate in discussions or media that arouse sexual feelings. Seeking out a healthy understanding of sexuality causes dissonance between incorporating their sexual nature into their identity and what that means against the definitions of sexual purity laid out by the Mormon Church. One female participant stated it well. The problem is, we're told we're broken because we're single, and also us being single and sexual beings. This dissonance compelled me to dig deeper. My research began with interviews with Mormon singles in Manhattan, a survey asking a Harlem singles congregation to rate their feelings and attitudes towards sexuality, and attending small book club discussions with Harlem singles, all from which these singles expressed that these issues exist now. Shame and frustration were common themes among survey respondents. In fact, a large percentage of those respondents either felt these feelings, or if they expressed positive feelings about sex, it was because they had worked through the shame and incorrect beliefs. One respondent said that she felt like it was created by God, but at the same time, just thinking or talking about it made her feel shame. A male interviewee recognized the taboos and the stigma around just talking about sex. The problem for Mormon singles is they are left to grapple with shame, feeling ostracized, and in some cases experience abuse because they don't feel safe to talk about sex. And accessing resources specific to their situation can cause internal turmoil. And I've been there myself. I'm Mormon, 35, and single. Embracing my sexual identity meant navigating internal conflict and challenging my beliefs and constructs of sexuality. And it's something that I'm still actively working through. It can be a struggle at times to find balance between my emotions and my convictions, but I believe there is clarity and hope in community. I was fortunate enough to join a book club with a few members from the Harlem Singles congregation. They are brave visionaries and committed community creators. Growing up in the faith all over the US, they are now hustling in New York as artists, publishers, UN workers, medical professionals, and educators. They volunteer in their Harlem congregation as leaders of organizations, teaching weekly lessons, organizing community events, and collaborating with local and regional leadership on new initiatives, especially for the LGBTQ members. They emerged as a group of courageous, determined singles, becoming an integral part of my research. This group allowed me the opportunity to direct the conversation around positive sexuality. In their apartment sanctuaries, they vulnerably shared their journeys of finding sources to understand healthy sexuality and posed questions of uncertainties left unanswered. These gatherings of trust created an environment that seeded the group's fire for change. It was clear the more we met, the solution was in harnessing the collective power of this group. The desire and the need was there, and all we needed to do was do something. Together we sought to create a solution. How might we build personal agency of single adult members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to access information and hold conversations about healthy sexual literacy while supporting their values and identity? We collaborated together to produce Known, Resetting the Mood on Sexual Literacy and Faith with LDS Single Adults, a half-day conference-style gathering set for April 24th for Mormon singles in the tri-state area to learn and talk about sexuality and faith. The goal is quite literally to open the door for singles to reprogram their belief about sexuality and build sexual wholeness. Our keynote speaker, Dr. Chellam Lovett, a professor of human sexuality at Brigham Young University, a Mormon-owned institution, who I interviewed in the fall, would focus her address on understanding healthy sexuality and building compassion. Smaller workshops would reframe pornography and modesty, communication, and consent. A live stream and records of the sessions would be posted in the conference website to widen accessibility. Crowdsourced resource lists would also be available online. Holding a church-sponsored event of this size requires regional leadership to get on board. I met with Joel Wiest, the president of the New York regional area for single adults. He was a little timid initially about the idea, but he understood the need to change mindsets about desire. He supported my pursuit to seek buy-in from the next level of leadership. COVID-19 may have stalled the conference for now, but it's actually given us an opportunity to reorient our focus. We may be doing large group gatherings virtually for the next little while. So we're aiming for community by beginning with building our own group manifesto, vision, and project strategy, thereby creating resources by Mormon singles to help grow capacity within a community and co-create an even more meaningful conference. And just to check in to see if our conversations about sexuality had an impact on those who came, they did. 100% of the respondents who I asked said that they felt community and connection to people who felt similarly to them by coming and talking about sexuality. And one of these respondents beautifully laid out the vision for what the future of this project can be. She said, "Meeting together and discussing this topic made me hopeful that we can get more people talking and interested, which hopefully would provide more resources to pull from and eventually change the way the church curriculum teaches chastity." This journey has deepened my appreciation for individuals' experiences and my own, showing me possibilities where I once only saw absolutes.